Welcome to this deep dive. Today is April 16th, 2026. And if you've been anywhere near the tech space this morning, you already know we're looking at a massive release. Anthropic just dropped Claude Opus 4.7.
Yeah, they really did. And we've got the full stack of launch notes right here, plus the benchmark data and some, honestly, very early, very dense expert analysis.
Right, sitting right here on the desk. So the mission for today is entirely for you. We're going to cut through all the social media hype and try to understand the actual mechanics of how this model achieves such an absurd leap in, autonomous agentic capabilities.
Because it really is a leap. And more importantly, we need to figure out if it's genuinely worth that steep price tag for your own professional stack,
Exactly. Okay, let's unpack this, because usually a software update just feels like buying a slightly sharper saw. It's an improvement, sure,
Yeah.
but it's still fundamentally inert.
Right, it just sits there.
Yeah, it waits for your command, you swing it, and it stops. But looking at the source material on Opus 4.7, we're completely out of the tool paradigm now.
We really are. We aren't buying a better hammer anymore. It's more like we're handing a complex blueprint to a master carpenter, right? You turn off the lights in the workshop and you come back the next morning to find the framing done, the plumbing routed, the electrical inspected.
It's just all of it, completely finished.
Exactly. It's the shift from assistance to true autonomy. And to really appreciate the gravity of what dropped today, we have to look at the compression of the timeline. The capability overhang is compounding way faster than most enterprise infrastructures can absorb.
Well, let's trace that timeline, because it's dizzying. I mean, go back to May 2025. We get the Claude 4 family, and suddenly they're topping the global leaderboards in coding tasks.
Yeah, that was huge.
It was. And then just 6 months later, November 2025, Opus 4.5 arrives with native computer use. Like, it was actively driving desktop environments, opening spreadsheets, manipulating slide decks.
Which was a massive architectural leap on its own. I mean, moving a cursor to execute a multi-step workflow meant the model had to maintain spatial awareness of an operating system.
While reasoning through the task at the same time.
Exactly, simultaneously. And we barely digested that before February 2026 rolled around. Opus 4.6 drops, and this is where the autonomy truly locked in. It hit that 14-hour task horizon on the METR benchmark.
Yeah, and just to be clear on what that actually looks like in practice for you listening, you give the AI a complex, really ambiguous goal, like migrating a messy legacy database. And it plans the migration, writes the scripts, hits a massive dependency error, like 3 hours in.
Which always happens.
Right. And then it searches the web for documentation, rewrites its own code, tests it, and just keeps grinding toward the solution for 14 straight hours without a human ever touching the keyboard.
That ability to self-correct over that duration without entering a degenerative hallucination loop, that's the holy grail of agentic AI.
Which brings us to the stack of papers in front of us today. Opus 4.7 launch notes are claiming a 10 to 15% increase in task success for agentic coding specifically.
And it's taking on SWE bench, which is notoriously unforgiving.
It's so unforgiving. And it's solving iterative, complex repository issues on the first pass, stuff that 4.6 was totally failing at just 2 months ago. But looking at the references here to Kaplan and Hausman's scaling laws, I'm skeptical. Is this 10 to 15% jump just Anthropic brute forcing the problem?
What do you mean by brute forcing?
Like, are they just spinning up infinitely more server clusters, or is the underlying cognitive architecture actually evolving here?
It's definitely not just brute force compute. If you just throw more GPUs at a flawed reasoning engine, you really just get the wrong answer faster.
Fair point.
Yeah, so what we are seeing with Opus 4.7 is a structural shift toward true hybrid reasoning. It has fundamentally changed how it allocates compute during inference.
Oh, wait. So it's actively deciding how hard to think about a prompt before it acts?
Yes, exactly. Think of it conceptually like a System 1 versus System 2 architecture.
Like Daniel Kahneman stuff.
Right. Kahneman's fast and slow thinking. For the last few years, LLMs were basically locked into that fast, instinctive, automatic processing. They were predicting the next token instantly. But Opus 4.7 dynamically scores the complexity of your input.
So if I ask it something really hard,
Right. If you ask it to, say, architect a novel cryptographic protocol, it doesn't just start spitting out code. It suppresses that instinct to reply immediately and triggers an extended thinking state.
I was actually reading about this extended thinking state in the technical notes. It essentially creates a hidden internal workspace, right?
Yeah, a private scratch pad, basically.
Yeah, so it maps out a decision tree, runs internal hypothesis testing, literally argues with itself about edge cases, discards the bad paths, and then begins generating the output you actually see.
Exactly. It allocates inference compute dynamically. And to sustain that internal workspace, especially over a 14-hour autonomous run, you need an ironclad memory.
Which brings up the context window. Opus 4.7 maintains a 1 million token context, which is roughly, what, 750,000 words?
About that, yeah.
But what really stood out to me in the benchmark data wasn't the size of the window, it was the retrieval accuracy. Because having a massive memory is useless if the agent forgets what it did 6 hours ago while troubleshooting a code base.
Oh, absolutely. The state management is where the million tokens really matter. If the agent is working all day generating thousands of lines of logs, terminal outputs, error codes, it holds that entire project state in working memory.
So it remembers that a specific variable was altered 8 hours prior.
Yes, which tells it exactly why the current function is breaking.
Okay, so the brain is managing state flawlessly. But I want to challenge the upgrades to its eyes, so to speak. The launch material heavily emphasizes this new native high-resolution vision. They pushed it up to 2,576 pixels on the longest edge.
Which is incredibly sharp.
It is, and the claim is that this dramatically reduces visual error rates by 20 to 40%. But why is native resolution suddenly the bottleneck? I mean, why wasn't it before?
Well, because the older models were practically flying blind when dealing with dense, unstructured visual data. Previously, if you fed an AI a massive, sprawling architectural diagram or, a screenshot of a heavily populated AWS management console, the model would compart it to save compute.
Ah, I see. And when you compress a dense UI wireframe, a semicolon turns into a smudge, or a critical dependency arrow just vanishes completely.
Right. And when the model encounters the smudge, it guesses. It literally hallucinates the missing data. But by supporting native 2,576 pixel resolution, Opus 4.7 isn't just looking at the general shape of an image, it's reading the microscopic footnotes in a scanned M&A legal document.
Wow.
Yeah, it's mapping the exact logic flow in a highly compressed engineering schematic. What's fascinating here is the sheer economic weight of that visual clarity.
What do you mean by economic weight?
Well, processing an image at that resolution costs about 4,784 tokens per image.
Wait, almost 5,000 tokens for one image.
Yeah. It is extremely expensive to give the model 2020 vision, which completely alters the calculus of how developers build applications on top of it.
Wow, okay, that token cost is no joke. And frankly, that is a perfect pivot into your reality as a listener. We can dissect cognitive architectures and multimodal benchmarks all day, but how does this massive, expensive infrastructure actually impact you right now?
That's the real question.
Yeah, so let me float an analogy to help map out Anthropic's current product tiering, because I know the branding can get a little muddy.
Let's hear it.
Think of your organization or your personal workflow as an orchestra. Right now, most of us are relying on Claude Sonnet 4.6, and Sonnet is the virtuoso violinist. It is lightning fast, highly capable, and perfect for the daily solos, right? Like drafting an executive summary, debugging a quick Python script, generating a marketing cadence.
Yeah, the everyday tasks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But Opus 4.7 isn't playing an instrument at all. Opus is the conductor.
Oh, I like the distinction, because a conductor isn't evaluated on how fast they can play a scale.
Precisely. The conductor reads the entire orchestral score, and that's your million token context. The conductor anticipates that the brass section is going to overpower the strings in the third movement and adjust the tempo before it even happens.
Right.
You don't hire the conductor to play a quick solo at a wedding. You hire the conductor to align incredibly complex, disparate elements into a cohesive 14-hour symphony.
And the early enterprise use cases reflect exactly that dynamic. We are looking at software engineering teams using Opus 4.7 not to write discrete functions, but to prototype entire game engines.
Entire game engine.
Entirely. The model is independently generating the asset pipeline, writing the physics engine, identifying bottlenecks between the two, and iterating on the optimization over days.
That is wild. Or look at the design integration, right?
Yeah.
Anthropic is pushing natural language design tools directly into ecosystems like Figma and Adobe. You aren't asking Opus to just draw a button anymore. You are telling Opus to conceptualize an entire e-commerce user interface.
Right, and the model is managing the structural logic, the component hierarchies, the design tokens across hundreds of screens behind the scenes.
And reading the tiny high-res visual feedback from the canvas to ensure the padding is mathematically perfect.
Thanks to those expensive vision tokens.
Exactly. But here's where it gets really interesting, and I'm going to push back on this whole ecosystem for a second. Let's talk about the literal price of genius. Opus is sitting at roughly $15 per million tokens for input and a staggering $75 per million tokens for output.
It's definitely premium pricing.
I mean, if Sonnet 4.6 is already a genius-level workhorse that costs a fraction of that, I'm struggling to see the broad business case here. $75 for output is astronomical in the API world. Why wouldn't I just hire a junior developer or a paralegal for the time it takes this model to run? Who's actually opening their wallet for this?
Well, if you view Opus 4.7 as a chatbot, the price is absurd. You would never use it. But if you view it as scalable cognitive labor, the economics completely flip.
How so? Because a junior dev is still cheaper than a 14-hour API call that churns millions of tokens.
Sure, but a junior dev doesn't work across parallel threads. And a junior dev certainly doesn't have the context of 10,000 previous successful deployments in their working memory.
Okay, that's fair.
Right. If Opus 4.7 can execute a complex codebase refactor in 4 hours, a task that would take a human team of 3 a full week to map, write, test, and deploy, the enterprise isn't looking at the API cost. They are looking at the time to market advantage.
Ah, right.
That $75 output cost is literally a rounding error compared to accelerating a product launch by 2 months.
Okay, I see the ROI on speed. I get that.
Yeah.
But handing over your AWS credentials to an autonomous agent running for 14 hours is terrifying. If it hallucinates a command and drops a production database, your time to market advantage goes to 0.
And that is exactly why enterprise buyers are willing to pay the premium. They aren't just buying the intelligence, they're buying the guardrails. An autonomous agent with a 14-hour horizon has an enormous blast radius. Yeah, if a chatbot hallucinates, you get a bad poem. If an agent hallucinates, it deletes your cloud infrastructure.
Which completely explains Anthropic's aggressive positioning on safety. They lean heavily on their constitutional AI framework. Instead of just relying on humans clicking thumbs up or thumbs down to train the model, they embed a core set of principles the AI constantly checks its own behavior against during that extended thinking phase.
Yeah, it creates a deterministic layer of reliability. And the launch notes confirm Opus 4.7 successfully passes ASL3 containment evaluations.
Which is a big deal, right?
It's massive. When you are deploying autonomous systems, ASL3 protocols are non-negotiable for serious enterprise. It ensures the model cannot independently exfiltrate data, bypass security protocols, or rewrite its own constraints.
Yeah, and the source material also details extensive evaluations against CBRN risks. That's chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear. They are rigorously testing whether Opus 4.7, left to its own devices for a day, could successfully act as a research assistant for a bad actor trying to synthesize a pathogen.
The CBRN testing is critical because as the reasoning capabilities scale, the model's ability to connect disparate, seemingly harmless academic papers into a dangerous synthesis increases exponentially. Anthropic's architecture specifically disrupts those dangerous conceptual bridges while maintaining professional utility.
And honestly, that safety profile is really their primary weapon in the frontier market right now. Look at the landscape. Opus 4.7 is fighting for oxygen against OpenAI's GPT-5.x, Google's Gemini 2.5 and 3, and xAI's Grok series. I mean, the frontier is brutal right now.
It is entirely saturated at the top.
But the differentiation is clear. Some of those competitors are maximizing raw inference speed. Others are optimizing for completely unconstrained generative creativity or deep integration into existing hardware ecosystems. Claude's moat is, and always has been, predictable depth.
Exactly.
If I am a multinational bank deploying an agent to reconcile complex financial ledgers across global branches, I do not want a creative AI.
Yeah.
I want an incredibly boring, incredibly meticulous AI that will never invent a phantom zero on a balance sheet.
Right. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the frontier isn't going to be won by the model that scores a point higher on a raw coding benchmark. It's going to be won by the model that the corporate compliance officer actually approves for deployment. Trust is the ultimate bottleneck for agentic AI, not compute.
True. Very true. But even with this conservative, trust-first approach, the source documents mention some wild undercurrents. There are notes in here about rumors surrounding something called Claude Mythos.
The Mythos rumors are fascinating.
What exactly is it? Because the notes suggest it's an internal, highly advanced version that isn't bound by the same latency constraints, and whispers of the eventual Claude 5, which supposedly takes mathematical reasoning and synthetic data generation to a completely different paradigm.
Yeah, from what we can gather, Mythos appears to be an unconstrained reasoning engine used purely internally by Anthropic to generate synthetic training data. It doesn't have to be fast enough for a consumer API. It just has to be incredibly deep.
And this raises an important question, one that external safety organizations are currently agonizing over. The Alignment Research Center and METR themselves have explicitly warned about the systemic risks of pushing task horizons further. We are celebrating 14 hours today, but what happens when it's 14 days?
Well, the containment protocols that work for a 14-hour task might be fundamentally inadequate for an agent navigating a dynamic, adversarial digital environment for a month. The model's goals can drift over time.
Goal drift.
Yeah. It might encounter a firewall, decide the firewall is an obstacle to its assigned goal, and autonomously decide to breach it.
Simply because it was told to optimize the workflow at all costs.
Indeed. Are the current ASL3 standards capable of containing long-horizon goal drift? The safety community is actively debating whether we are outrunning our own containment theories right now.
So what does this all mean? We've traced the dizzying timeline from chatbots to master carpenters. We've broken down the mechanics of hybrid reasoning, the internal workspaces, the massive token costs of native high-resolution vision, and the brutal economics of frontier AI.
It's a lot to process.
It is. And if we step back and distill this entire stack of launch notes and benchmark data for you, the listener, the takeaway is pretty clear. Opus 4.7 is not a flashy toy designed to revolutionize how you draft an email. It is a consolidation of industrial power. It is a heavily guarded, incredibly expensive conductor built for enterprise workflows where reliability is absolutely non-negotiable and failure is catastrophic.
It is the cognitive infrastructure you deploy when you need a system to manage the complexity, not just assist with it.
So the immediate challenge for you is to audit your own workflows. Do you actually need the deep coordination of the Opus conductor, or are you perfectly fine utilizing the speed of the sonnet violinist? Because the paradigm has shifted. You are no longer just buying a smarter tool. The master carpenter is actively looking for work, and the blueprint is sitting entirely in your hands.
And as we close out, I want to leave you with a thought that builds directly on the reality of that METR benchmark. We are sitting here today analyzing the implications of an AI reliably executing complex, autonomous workflows for 14 hours straight. But computing power and algorithmic efficiency scale exponentially. We are looking down the barrel of the next iterations.
It's moving so fast.
It is. What happens when the models running behind the scenes, the rumored Claude 5 or Mythos frameworks, can run autonomously not for 14 hours, but for a week or an entire fiscal quarter? At what point do you stop being the manager of the AI tool and instead wake up to realize you've become just one small dependent node in a vast global workflow that the AI itself is directing?
It's an incredibly sobering perspective to end on. The line between user and resource is getting thin. We'll leave you to ponder your place in that blueprint. Thanks for exploring the frontier with us, and we'll catch you on the next Deep Dive.